Hello and welcome to this video. Tina Turner, one of the greatest singers and performers in 20th century music history, has died at the age of 83. On this video I'm going to give you my thoughts on this incredible artist. I've got nothing planned. I found out about it late last night and thought, shall I do a video or not? And my initial thoughts were, no, I won't do a video for Tina, because I couldn't think of what to say. And then as the time has gone on, the real ramifications of someone that legendary passing, I realised I've got something to say. So I've come in here and this is my reaction to it. Now, Tina Turner is a very interesting character in the history of popular music. She's a one-off really, and I'm going to explain why that is. She seems to go beyond category. There's very few artists that are like this, but she definitely goes beyond category. She was born in 1939. She came to fame in Ike Turner's band in the 1950s. Ike Turner is one of the most important musicians in rock history. Someone like Little Richard, and there's a good argument that Little Richard is one of the founding fathers of rock and roll. He pointed to Ike's single in 1951, Rocket 88, as being the first rock and roll track. And there's an argument that Fats Domino was there a couple of years before him. But what Ike brought to the music was a much heavier blues influence, especially around the guitar. And he's probably the architect of that sort of, what ends up as that distorted rock guitar sound. Ike also happened to be a psychotic bipolar drug addict as well. And his treatment of Tina when she was in the band, and then subsequently when she got married and took his surname, is legendary. You know, Tina Turner documented this in her book I, Tina, and this has been made into a film, and that abuse has almost gone into sort of folklore now. The work she did in that band is absolutely incredible. Tina brought to rock and roll and eventually rock music, she brought gospel, she brought soul, but she also had that bite, the bite that really comes from the blues. She had that grain in her voice. She was also an incredible performer, electric on stage. There's very few artists like this, and although she could well be categorized as coming out of sort of gospel and soul, that strong blues sound that's in her voice transmitted easily into rock music. Ike Turner pioneered so much through the 50s and 60s, but when he teamed up with Phil Spector, they started making sort of monumental hits, you know, and River Deep Mountain High, Phil Spector thought was his greatest track. That combination of Phil Spector's huge production sound and Ike's sort of rootsy blues was just a magical thing. Of course, Phil Spector was another of rock and roll's, you know, great psychotic, insane madman who eventually went to prison for murder, you know. So Tina's coming out of a very dark place at that time, making incredible hit records. In the 70s, I think in 1976, she'd had enough and she had to do a runner with virtually nothing, you know, no money, nothing. She basically had to escape. And without that support, she had to start again. You know, she had to go back to doing small gigs, you know, playing all sorts of different music that wasn't quite suited to her. You know, she flirted with disco. There is actually an incredible version of Whole Lot of Love that she did, which dare I say is better than the Led Zeppelin version. And I do think it is. When the 80s came in, a lot of those artists that had come out of that sort of Chitlin Circuit, Soul Review, dirty rock and roll, they were unable to survive into the 1980s, where it all became very, you know, techie and sampley and drum machiney. certain musicians like Michael Jackson, of course, and Prince were able to forge away and take that sort of soul, rhythm and blues sound and update it for the 1980s. Both Prince and Michael Jackson were interesting because they brought in a little pinch of rock music into the sound. Of course, Michael Jackson bringing in Eddie Van Halen on Beat It to be able to create a sound that was not only accessible to that sort of black rhythm and blues soul audience, but also accessible to a sort of whiter MTV rock audience. Of course, Prince came in with exactly the same sort of sound with all the electric guitar. In terms of a voice, Tina's voice was able to sing the blues, the soul, and she was able to sing rock music. So in the 1980s, Mark Knopfler's writing a song for the next Dire Straits album, which is really coming out of sort of Dire Straits' background of sort of, you know, that sort of country, folky, rock, blues sound. And the song Private Dancer, of course, those lyrics would be much better suited to a woman singing it than, say, Mark Knopfler singing it. So he thinks, you know, I should get a woman to sing this. Tina then sings that song, and this song at that time is absolutely unlike what you would associate with Tina. She puts that record out, it becomes a monumental hit, and I think this is down to her voice, her charisma, her performance. This is why I think she's beyond category. I think that woman could have sang anything, really, and be able to have a hit record with it. And she re-emerges again. She's one of the biggest stars of the 1980s. She holds the record for doing the biggest gig by a solo performer in history. She had 180,000 people turn up and buy tickets to see her live. That is unbelievable. The album that Private Dancer was on, which I think is called Private Dancer, I remember I'm pulling all this out of my head, I haven't prepared. I think that sold around about 10 million copies, which is an incredible amount. And she becomes a superstar again. Her superstarness is so huge that she ends up having a biopic about her, you know, which is an incredible thing. People are still talking about her today, even though in 2000 she retired, which is over 20 years ago. And she hasn't done anything that much since. But people know who she is, they know that songs, and the shockwaves that were sent out by what happened when everyone found out she died. It's like my kids, who were like, you know, pretty young, obviously, they were 12 and 14. I was lying in bed last night and they sort of burst in and said, Dad, you're not going to believe it, Tina Turner's died, God in heaven. God, this is my mum. Every time I'm doing a video, I don't know how she knows it. My mum's got extrasensory perception and she seems to know every time I'm doing a video, she rings me up. Anyway, it proves I'm doing this on the fly. I always say this now. I'm going to have to tell her not to ring me up. How can I get that across? Anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent on this because I really want to show respect for one of the greatest artists in the world. She's one of my favourite singers. When we start to say great female singers, say Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, I don't think people automatically say Tina Turner, and she is on that level, if not beyond it for me. And I think the reason is because she's bigger than that, right? As a singer, she was absolutely incredible. And some of you may know this story, some of you may not, but I will tell it. In 1970, 73, 74, say 73, Frank Zappa was in the studio, and in the next studio was Ike Turner recording with Tina Turner and the Ikeettes, which are the other girl backing singers in that band. And he'd written a tune called Montana. And in Montana, there's a sort of modern classical vocal part that's written. It's incredibly complex. It has to be sung incredibly fast. It's not diatonic, so it's moving through all sorts of chromatic movements with wide interval jumps. At one point, you have to sing a very complex line, which is in a polyrhythm of 10/4, right? Absolutely incredible. Like most singers would not stand a chance. And so, you know, Frank goes next door and says to Ike, can I borrow your singers to see if they can sing this thing? And I think he says something like, yeah, but don't pay him very much, which Frank ignored and paid him a decent amount. So they go in and they start to put this together, and Tina Turner nails his vocal, plus all the backing vocals on the rest of that album. That album, Overnight Sensation, is one of Zappa's favourite albums. Everyone loves that album. It's got all the popular tracks on. And I think one of the things that just differentiates that from all his other albums are these incredible soulful backing vocals. If anyone's heard I'm the Slime is dirty, bluesy and rootsy and gutsy. And when you hear Tina and the Ike's kick in, and that you can hear Tina in there, you can hear that voice, the same as when she sings that incredibly complex line in Montana, you can hear Tina's voice. Now at the time she didn't get a credit for it. I don't think I wanted her to get a credit. It's only now, as time's gone on, that people have realised the virtuosity of that woman's ability. It's absolutely incredible. I think with Tina Turner, what we have is the full package, you know, because the other thing about Tina is her ability to perform. A few years back I did a gig with an incredible singer called Tesney Jones, who's a good mate of mine. She's an incredible singer, and we did a gig and she wanted to pull songs from all the greatest singers that ever lived, you know, and she did Chaka Khan songs and I think we may have well done 2 Tina Turner songs. And I can remember when she did the gig, she stood on stage and she says, I'm going to find my inner Tina. And she put her body into a certain place, and as soon as you saw that, you went, that's Tina. Now, the greatest artists in music history, you can just have a silhouette of them and you will know who they are. Tina Turner, not only having one of the greatest voices in music history, with absolute virtuoso singer, not just great because it's so iconic, but an absolute virtuoso singer. Also, charisma and performance-wise is one of the greatest of all time. So I hope on this video I've been able to explain what the passing of an artist like this means. What happened in the 20th century in popular music is an incredible thing. Those who lived through a period artistically that will go down in history, equal to, say, the Renaissance, equal to, say, the Romantic period, equal to, say, the great Hollywood period in the sort of 30s, 40s, when Hollywood was at its peak. And for the latter part of the 20th century, rock, pop, whatever you want to call it, the whole thing was so incredible. It was popular, everybody loved it, but it was also great art. And it created incredible performance, the likes of which we will maybe not see again, because the cultural context in which rock and roll and rock music developed was very, very special. And that cultural context is something I'm trying to explain on this channel, so that people who visit and watch these videos, this is why I don't talk so much technically or get into the theory or go on about how cool chord progressions are or scales and all that type of stuff, because the thing that's fascinating is not that. Anybody who says that music's about that, that's actually discounted by rock and pop and rock and roll. You know, some of the greatest songs, Cold Sweat for example, it's got 2 chords. There's so many songs that have no one chord, you know. With some hip-hop tracks they have no real harmonic center at all. You know, it's not about melody, it's not about anything but the vibe of the track. And the incredible thing about 20th century popular music is its ability to, I think, transmit self-expression, individuality, personality, right? And to be a voice of people who before had not been able, in the sort of Western cultural context, to express themselves. Tina Turner, when you listen to her, you are hearing Afro-American vocal that goes right back to the beginning of that music. You hear it go right the way back to Bessie Smith, right the way back to Ma Rainey, right the way back to those, you know, poor slaves in the field singing their work songs. That is in her voice, that's in the grain. And it's incredible that voice was so important, you know, to late 20th century popular music. But Tina was able to take that, and she was able to transmit that into all styles of music. And so the general public just perceived her as being simply the best. Sorry, I had to do it. Tina, you were one of the greatest. I absolutely love your vocals. I love your songs. I think everybody does. Who doesn't like Tina Turner? Who? Any of you lot not like Tina Turner? What a performer. What a woman. What an artist. So, rest in peace, Tina. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, because you'll get to see some more. And if you want to see my next video when it comes out, ring the notification bell. And if you want to support me on Patreon, you know, pop over there. But that is my tribute to one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Thanks for watching.